Hello again, YouTube. It's Skylar. Welcome back to my face. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about yet another transphobic Texas bill, HB 229, which was recently introduced and passed in the House last week. Texas is definitely trying for the top spot of most transphobic lawmaker state in the country. I thought Florida was, but they're really pushing. So, all right, before we get into it, this isn't my usual setup, as you've probably noticed. It's kind of like it looks like an old school Skylar Irvine video. It's because I'm in the process of moving. So the next few videos are just going to be kind of a little bit different while I try to get my new studio set up. I am very tired. I have been moving basically for the past 10 days straight, and I'm exhausted. So, but I promised this video like 2 days ago, so I'm here to make the video. All right, so Erin Reed in the morning, who Erin Reed, if you don't know, is the wife of Representative Zoe Zephyr, representative of Montana. She's been doing amazing work, and she compiled a database basically of all these transphobic bills that are being passed in the country, and we're already almost close to 900 just this year, which somewhere around 77 to 80 of them have already been passed. But there's also a little bit of a map that kind of showcases the United States, and it's kind of like a heat index of transphobia. And Texas is really on par with like Florida as being so bad that it's basically considered a travel advisory at this point for LGBT people, which is terrible. But here we are. So one thing that I wanted to point out about this bill is that they are trying to take a page out of the recent Supreme Court case in the UK, which defines a person's gender as the biological sex that they were born with based on their reproductive organs. Now, you should already know that this doesn't make any sense because science and medical science have already determined for probably close to 100 years now that both biological sex and gender identity exist on a spectrum. And so trying to force that into a category of binary is not only incorrect, but it's anti-science. And trans people are definitely going to be, and intersex people too, are going to be the most affected by this type of legislation, because despite them not existing in a single binary, the system that they live in is now trying to force them into that binary, which causes a lot of issues, not only for themselves and their gender identity with dysphoria, but also affects things like medical insurance costs, and just there's a whole host of things that people don't really realize that your gender is affected by. But a lot of trans people are very well aware of that. And so this is just another really sad attempt at Texas lawmakers to try to force down another transphobic bill and just try to stick it to the trans people. The last video I made, they were actually trying to criminalize being trans with up to 2 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Thankfully, that one didn't go anywhere. But yeah, they're really trying to chip away and trying to just do as many human rights violations as possible because of the political climate that we're in, which has just been transphobia after transphobia after transphobia. And it's really disappointing to see that in a country like the US, where we purport freedom and individualism, that we would see this happening. So I just wanted to go into a few key points on this today. One of them being that it's never about chromosomes. And what I mean by that is that if you were to ask one of these individuals, one of these lawmakers who voted yes for this recent bill, they will tell you, oh, well, we're just sticking to chromosomes, or in the case of sports, is muscle twitch fibers and this and restrooms. But I feel like a more expedited way of getting to the core of the conversation with these individuals, because there is a difference between, yes, there are well meaning individuals in society who just have a misunderstanding about trans people and trans issues. But people that are in positions of actually being lawmakers and legislators, that's a different category because they're actually trying to push an agenda on this. And you can see that when there's over 900 bills trying to be passed around the entire country in the span. It hasn't even been a full year. It's just been since January. There is a key ideological momentum that they're trying to enact, which is we don't like trans people and we want them to be basically erased from society in any way that we can. And so whenever somebody is having a conversation with one of these people, if you really want to get to the core issue of what the conversation is about, ask them the question, do you think being trans is normal? Don't ask like, oh, well, equal rights in this area or, sports, and just ask them point blank, do you think being trans is normal? Because I guarantee you that their answer is just going to be no. And that comes down to the key ideological framework of they don't think trans people are normal. They don't think that it's something that's natural. They don't think that trans people even exist at all. And so they're trying to frame the conversation, trying to frame the debate around this is how we can basically erase trans people in every aspect of society that we can possibly get away with, which is what the intention is. It's what their goal is. So you have to understand that this is coming from an ideological place of we don't like trans people. Trans people have been designated as the group of individuals in our society that we are supposed to be conditioned to basically hate. And they're going to move that legislatively in any way that they can possibly get away with. Again, they just recently, a lawmaker in Texas tried to pass a law to make it illegal to be trans. Now that's not, we're concerned about, sports and twitch muscle fibers and that's an ideology. That's politically motivated ideology. And it really shows that when they always come out and say, oh, well, the trans agenda, the transgender ideology, which there is no ideology, it's just trans people exist and we're just part of nature. Being trans is not something that you do, it's something that you are. But then they go and try to pass an actual agenda, which is decidedly against trans people existing, which you can't erase an aspect of society, which is just inherent to the human condition. Again, history has been down this road before. I would like to think that we don't go and repeat the same mistakes of the past. You could probably think of a few examples that I'm referring to in history where something like this has happened, where a certain category of people have been designated as the other, as the prime offender of society's ills, when it's in completely not true, and then the ramifications of those things occur. And it's sad to see, but it feels like that right now with what's going on in the United States and maybe in several other countries as well, is that same pattern is starting to emerge. And so it's really important that we kind of get ahead of the curve on this and try to educate people as much as possible on transgender issues and the fact that trans people, intersex people, non-binary people, and everything in between is just a natural function of the human condition. There's nothing that you can do about it, and trying to erase it is just ludicrous. I also feel that a lot of these ideological motivators from people in these positions of power are actually coming from a position of they themselves are struggling with their own gender identity or their own issues with gender. Because when you grow up, when you live in a society that's open and inclusive to LGBT people, you don't have to fight an internal struggle, a battle to understand and recognize that you exist as an LGBT person. You just come to the realization, oh, well, I'm gay, or I'm trans, or I'm a lesbian, or bisexual, or whatever. You just come to that realization one day, or over a series of months and years. It happens differently for every person, but you just accept that, oh, this is just who I am. But when somebody lives in an environment that's inherently transphobic and inherently bigoted towards LGBT people, those LGBT people in that group are still always going to exist, except now they're going to live in an environment where instead of acknowledging and exploring that aspect of themselves and coming to terms with it, they're like, oh, well, no, I've been told that that's wrong, that I can't. And they repress it. They keep repressing it and repressing it and repressing it. But you can't do that. You can't repress part of who you are. And then the ramifications of doing that psychologically, I'm not a therapist, but it starts spilling out all over the place. And so you see this projection of they call it the trans ideology. There is no ideology, but there is an ideology for being anti-trans. And then all of the people that are so fixated, they're so obsessed with trans people. It's likely because they themselves are probably trans, or they're dealing with their own gender identity and they can't accept that. And so all of that repression starts spilling out all over the place in the form of bigotry and hatred, thinking that, well, if I just make it so that society doesn't allow trans people to exist, then I don't have to acknowledge my own feelings, and then I can be done with it, and then we can move on. But that's not how it works. You can't ideologically legislate part of reality out of existence. And yes, trans people are part of reality. It was never about the chromosomes. You don't walk into a restaurant and see somebody at the counter and go, XX chromosomes. Watch out for XX chromosomes. No, most people don't even know what their chromosomes are. I don't even know what my chromosomes are. I have a pretty good idea of what they probably might be, but lab work and blood tests, and most doctors don't even test for that kind of stuff unless they're specifically going after a very specific diagnosis. So I'd say the majority of people in society don't even know what their chromosomes actually are. And yes, intersex people exist. And there are people that have XXY, different variations of chromosomes. And I would reckon that number is a lot higher than probably people would like to think. And they're, the transphobic side would say, it's such a small percentage, it's negligible. There's no reason to pay attention to intersex people during this. No, that's the point. Intersex people exist. That's the point. There's a spectrum there. Biological sex and gender exist on a spectrum, and that coincides with the rest of nature too. There's literally animals in the animal kingdom that can biologically shift from male to female or reverse, and they can do that multiple times throughout their life. It's not something that is alien to the human condition or nature itself. It's part of it. And so this is why I feel like we really need to start having a different kind of conversation about trans issues, because there's just, it's like people in power, they're trying to they're trying to play a different kind of game than I feel like what they're like, how can we get rid of trans people in any way that we can? We'll use this argument, we'll use that argument. It doesn't matter. Whatever works, whatever we can do to push the anti-trans agenda, that's what we're going to do. And I think people need to start recognizing that's what's really going on. They're not concerned with bathrooms. They're not concerned with sports. They're not concerned with chromosomes. They don't like trans people, and they're going to do whatever they can get away with legislatively. And if it doesn't pass, they'll try again, and they'll try again, and they'll try again. And people need to realize that that's really what's going on here. So, with that said, if you enjoy my content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing videos. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.